Hello everyone, Bifrost 2.6 has been released and it's a full feature release with new capabilities, performance improvement and bug fixing. Basically they touch everything on the graph and there is a little bit of everything for everyone on this release. On this part 1, I'll focus basically on the new UI and UX part of the graph, like for example the new redesign of the backdrop and sticky notes, the new redesign of the U editing compounds. It's a lot more friendly when you need to edit those compounds. And auto pore expansion, for example, the new way to create a Maya mesh straight from the graph, and a lot more. And there's going to be some tips involved there, so don't miss it. On part 2, I'll focus on all the dynamic updates. So if you want to watch that video is going to come out very, very soon. So without further ado, let's start. Thank you. Alright, so to talk about this new feature, I'm gonna create a mesh torus, make it a little bit bigger, and then add more points to work with. Let's go 50. Alright, I'm gonna create a new graph. With that selected, by the way, it's gonna bring that into the graph so we can hide now the source. And if you press C, if you connect that and press C, you're gonna see that now that makes the connection to the output, and now we have the data in Bifrost. All right, cool. So to show this, just to make it a little bit more fun, I'm gonna add some noise into this. This is my own compound, by the way. It's nothing fancy. If we look inside, basically I have something for time, so I can animate this noise. I have a fractal turbulence field. Then I'm displacing those points and updating the mesh normal. That's it. And then some, again, so I can animate, change the speed and whatnot. All right. So first thing is this new create Maya mesh, which is actually pretty handy, and a lot of people was asking about. I was asking for this feature straight from the graph. Before 2.6. Just if I graph this and if I click here now, basically before 2.6 you need to do all these connections manually, which was fine. I mean, or you could also script it too, but yeah, so I mean it's actually very welcome option here that we have if you right click on the output and then just can create a Maya mesh. This is going to allow you to do something very quickly like a noise and then output that, or any other operations and then just output that into a Maya mesh. As you can see, it creates a Maya mesh. It's going to be whatever name you give it here. So if you want to change that, do it before you convert it into a Maya mesh, right? You can also delete this. It's going to delete everything. And if I do, I don't know, rename this into out geo here, and then again, right click, create Maya mesh. Now it's going to be out geo. If I move this, the connection is going to keep live. You can also obviously delete history, so it doesn't keep live, but the animation is going to be gone. So if I duplicate this now, obviously we're going to have a froze option here, right? Because it's not being updated. So this is very cool. Again, to do quick operations, or for example, if you do something and it's not extremely heavy, you can also render in other engines like Redshift, V-Ray, RenderMan, and whatnot, etc. Right? Other than Arnold. So for example, if I create a geo property here, I'm gonna do a random color. I'm gonna say point color, and let's do a random color here. So I'm gonna say random color array. I'm gonna get the point count from this. Get point count, right? It's going to be the new size and then connect there. We don't see the color here, but I want to see it. You can assign diagnostic material here. So if I do this and we connect this guy here, now we see the point color. This Bifrost to Geo to Maya, basically what it does is transfer some properties. By default is the point color, but you can transfer anything. You can do point velocity, for example, point size, right, and etc. If you don't want to tab, you want to transfer everything, just do an asterisk, and that's going to transfer everything. You can also transfer the normals, and again, this is getting passed. It's obviously it's not seen. What this is happening here is being saved as a vertex color. So if you go into the mesh tools, mesh display, color set editor, now we have all these new properties, because remember, I'm using the asterisk. So if we look at this and we say point color, still you don't see it, is because you need to go into the mesh display here, mesh control, mesh component, and then say display color, and now you can see in the viewport as well, for example, that property right there. And this is coming from the mesh control, because that is the current color set that we are previewing, right? You can also do point normal, for example, on here. So just make sure that this is getting passed, and then you display this here. If you try to render them, for example, with, if I go in my approach here, and then let's try, if you just render, let me add a dome light here, lights, dome light, and then need to change this into Redshift real quick. Defaults is fine, Redshift render view, and if I press render here now, what you're gonna see that when you don't see the color, obviously, but we also don't see this mesh. We just see the mesh, because this is the Maya mesh and this is the Bifrost graph. Right now, as you might know, we don't have yet an opportunity to have nodes here from Redshift or V-Ray or RenderMount, 3D Light, or any other render. In the future, obviously, it's going to happen. It's going to be much better workflow. But for now, you need to convert it into a Maya mesh. If you want to see this point color that we see in the viewport, what you need to do is obviously bring that into a Redshift user data color, and then use that property point color. If I do that and I create a shader surface standard here, and then I connect this into the color, right? Drag and drop here, and now we press render. Now, oh well, I need to I need to assign that, right? Now we're gonna see this guy here. So that's very cool. Again, this works, for medium to light stuff. If you have a very heavy data set coming from here, this might be a little too expensive, and you might want to catch this into an Alembic or a USD and then use the procedurals. Right now on Redshift we don't have procedurals, but if you use V-Ray, that is gonna work. It's the same with V-Ray, by the way. If I do a dome light here and we use the viewport here, it's gonna render the Maya mesh. We are V-Ray surface, V-Ray material. Let me just assign this here. Now we see that, and then if I press play, you can see that actually it's updating a little bit quicker than the render view in Redshift. But you can do the same, use a user data color here, do point color as well, and it's gonna work the same way. And any other render that has these options, it's gonna do the same. So there you go. So again, this is a handy and welcome addition that a lot of people was waiting for. So I'm glad that now we have it right from the graph, and then just right click and create Maya mesh. All right, let's move on. Thank you. So another very handy addition that also before 2.6 we need to do manually is the option to bring locators from the outliner. So if I create a locator now and drag and drop, we get a transform. And for example, if I want to move this, right, if I do a transform points and I connect this again, before what you need to do is output this, promote this into the Bifrost graph, and then connect that manually in the node editor. Now again, drag and drop, connect, and be done with it. So now you can move, for example, your shapes in the graph, scale them and whatnot, right? And all that is gonna just work just fine. Again, this is super another little thing, but it's gonna make your workflow and work a little bit faster as well. Another small thing but useful is the new port group expansion. Basically, what it's gonna do if I assign a material, because if I create a standard material, we have a bunch of groups here that we can play with. So I'm gonna get the position here real quick, get point position. Even though it's gonna be an array and all these are expecting one value, it's gonna throw an error, but just to show the functionality. Before, if you wanted to connect any value into any of these groups, you need first to open the group and then connect. So that took a couple of seconds here and there or a few seconds, but now you can just hover and it's going to open that group, and now you can connect, which if you disconnect, it's going to close that up. Again, it's something small, but it's going to save some time here and there, which is very helpful. All right, let's talk about the new redesign of the backdrops. So for example, now if I want to create a backdrop, we have a new shortcut for that. Shift B, if you select some nodes, it's going to create a new backdrop. Or you can also select nodes, right click on the graph and say create backdrop, right? The new backdrops works way better. If before 2.6, if you were trying to select, just say this node, now as you can see, you can select it. But before, if you were doing this drag, it will select the whole backdrop and move everything. It was actually pretty unfriendly, to be honest. But this is much better. And also, if you hover over, you have this bar, and then if you click here, it's going to give you a few defaults to change the color of the backdrop, right? Which is nice. If you don't like any of these colors, you can go to custom and then pick your own color and change, for example, the alpha that you see here. So if I go again here, you can make it more opaque or less opaque, right? Which is great. More options, much better. We also have an option for the tile size. So if you look at the backdrop now, this is the default. If you press 2, it's going to go bigger. If you press minus 2, it's going to go smaller. Obviously, you can put a name here. So if I double click and say, it's going to be noise. It's going to be noise, and then it's going to be materials. Again, it's just they work so much better. It's just very nice. You can, if you want to remove something, you can just click delete that, and it's going to delete it without deleting the nodes, which is actually nice. Also, if you right click here, you can say remove background, actually from here, remove backdrop. So another thing that got updated, redesigned, are the sticky node. There's 2 ways to create this, or actually 3 ways. You can actually go here, create a sticky node, and the shortcut is Shift S. So if you press Shift S, it's going to create a sticky node. Or you can right click also here and then create a sticky node right here, right? So this is basically used for notes for your teammates, you know. So this is where you can modify the noise settings. For example, just put in quick notes for your teammates, for yourself, so you remember stuff, and it's actually a more clear and more friendly graph as well. Again, and this give you a few colors here. You don't have a custom color right now, but it might come in a future update. So anyway, again, are useful, and then you can move all of them at the same time to here. Okay, so another thing that 2.6 brings is the way that you interact or edit your own compounds. A quick reminder how to do a compound. You basically select a group of nodes, and then let's say that is 2. I can press Ctrl G. That's going to create a compound, and you start basically promoting different parameters to the outside, right? So let's promote a couple here, a few. When you're happy with this, you select your compound, press Ctrl P, and you can also go to, I believe is option, I can remember now, create publish compound. And you give it a name, save it where your library is, and you press publish. So then you can look it up right here. And yeah, there's the way that you create compounds. When you publish the compound, you will see that now on my own compound, and then also the core of the Bifrost core nodes as well are compounds. We have this new node here, which is basically a pencil. As you can see in this compound that I just created, but it's not published, is available. It's because these guys are grayed out because you need to make them edible. So if you right click in a compound and you say make it edible, as soon as I do that, that's going to become available. So that means now we can edit and customize this UI for this compound. A little tip that is not new for 2.6. Let's say that you're making your compound and you want to share it with your teammates or a TD just to see how progress is being done. You can basically copy this guy here. So you can say Control C and go to your text editor and just paste that and save this as txt and send it through email. And if you are working in Slack or Discord, you can just say Control C and Control V into the Discord or Slack, and that's going to create a text for you straight from there. So it's a great way to share quick, to share quick compounds with your teammates. All right, so let's talk about what is new in this customized UI. So if I click here now, we have this new window that we can see right straight on the parameters. And the first thing that you're gonna notice is that you can drag and drop your own parameters right here. You can drag multiple parameters and drag and drop, which is great. Before 2.6 you couldn't do this, and the only way to do this actually before that, it was through right clicking here, and you could move one port at a time, which wasn't great. So having the option to move multiple parameters at the same time is a great addition. Another thing that you can do straight from the UI is now right click and then add something to a group that already exists, like displacement, or create a group here too. So I can say settings, and whatever I selected, that's not getting to there. And then now you can drag either by one, or you can drag multiple as well into the group, which is also another great option there. So this again, it's just an improvement in a way that you can edit your compounds and just make it easy for you to edit quickly and share this with your teammates. So let's talk about this new window, the Customize UI window. If you need to, for example, let's go, the magnitude, and let's say that you need to put a min and max value, you can do it through here. The default is going to be whatever is already there. So my minimum is going to be 0 and my maximum is going to be 2, and the default is going to be this one that is already there. As soon as I do that, basically, I have this slider that it cannot go below 0, and it cannot go past 2, as you can see here. If you leave it by default, you're going to notice that you can go negative values, and you can do any value, positive or negative. It can go anywhere here. So yes, something to keep in mind. What else? So what else is new? You have on the combo box, for example, you have a combo box option here. And this is basically a menu that allows you to add a value to it. So let's say that we want to add a frequency, a max frequency here, and it's going to be 5. And I'm going to copy paste this, but I'm going to just say min for minimum. And let's say that this is going to be 0.1. In order to see this latest entry, you need to add an empty one, by the way. If not, that won't show up. So if I do that now, we have the frequency, but we have a max and minimum. If I do minimum, nothing shows up. If I do max, it's going to be number 4, as you can see. It's going to be crazy. And you can also change still through the numbers as well. This is just kind of like some presets that you can add. Great. So as you saw here, we have a couple of options, and this is depending on the port. Now what we can do as well is change the port directly from the UI, and we have different ports: string, float, boolean, and more. Right? If you would write here, we have different ports here. So each port is going to give you different options. Let's say that speed. Wanted to make a color, so I'm gonna pick that now. Instead of being a float, this should be a color, a vector 3, and instead of virtual slider, it's gonna be a color picker. As soon as I do that, you have a color picker now. And before 2.6, this was we needed to script that, so it's actually a welcome addition now that we can do it right here through the UI. So a boolean is going to be this, a checkbox basically, 0 to 1. But let's say that instead of the ratio is going to be a string. I'm going to change this port to a string. So this is going to give you, for example, a file browser which is going to create a folder, and it's going to give you an option to open files. So if I do this, it's going to open basically your Windows browser there. Or you can change, for example, the behavior to save something instead of opening. And you can also change the browse type to a file into a folder, for example, if you need to grab a folder. When you want to save something, you can also filter your images. And you also have this option here, combo box. And the difference between the combo box on the flow type is that this is just text. So for example, I can say position, I'm gonna add another one, normals, and this is gonna be more helpful when, for example, change properties or something like that. This is just a text menu, basically. It doesn't affect anything. And remember also, it's the same thing here. So if you want to see this last entry, we need to add an empty entry here. Now we're going to see this guy. It's going to be just a menu. Again, that's why it's going to be more helpful for strings or for properties if you need to change properties into a compound or something like that. But yeah, try it out, play with it. But it's a much friendly way to actually edit these compounds, and with the new color picker and changing the min and max if you need to add that, presets and whatnot. I believe that it's gonna be it's definitely a welcome addition, and I'm sure we're gonna see more improvements in the future. Yep, with that said, let's move on. Thank you for watching. All right, let's talk about some geonodes here. Don't get too excited. You won't find poly extrusion, poly bevel, or anything like that just yet on this release 2.6. These are basically more like anything low level to mid level tools, I will call them. And basically there are some like building blocks to start building more high level nodes that can be something like that, right? Can be some of those type of nodes. So it's basically more for TDs or advanced users that they know how to manipulate mesh data, basically, right? Polygonal data. But still, I mean, I think that you can actually use some of this. I separate this in two groups. This is what I consider mid to high level. And really the only high level that I will probably consider myself is this separate mesh. And then these are low level, and this is kind of in between, because if you know what point neighbors can do for you and how to use this data, it can be a powerful thing. I'm not going to go in depth on all these nodes, by the way, because this video is already pretty long, but just to touch on a few things and how you can use maybe these guys on your daily workflow, right? So let's start with this guy, because to me this is one of the more powerful ones, to be honest. And this is also lifting one of the limitations that we had before this node. This is not new to 2.6. It was actually released, I believe, in 2.5.1, but it wasn't really talked much. But basically what this guy is going to do is going to grab some properties, custom data, any kind of custom data, right, from the source, and it's going to copy all those properties to the target by your by indices, right? And it's going to output this data intact, so it's going to keep the data intact. This guy, as I said, it was one of the limitations. Before this node, there was a lot of repetition to start copying data back and forth between the matches, and it was really, it was kind of cumbersome, to be honest. And so this is going to make your life a lot easier for TD, again, or more advanced users. You're going to find this guy, by the way, everywhere. If you go to, like anywhere that you see these properties here, right, you're gonna start finding this guy. So if I go here, filter face, you're gonna find target transfer points properties, and again, it's gonna be everywhere. So it's gonna be it's a kind of a very welcome addition for TDs and more advanced users when you want to start creating more of those high level tools and keep all the properties intact. All right, so we have some mid to high level. Again, the high level for me is this one, separate matches. You're gonna find that also in on this, and it basically does the same of this command. The only difference is obviously that this is gonna be procedural because it's a node. Then we have the attached faces, so you feed some an array of points here or indices, and then it's going to give you the attached faces. So that's pretty straightforward. These two basically to me are more like a clean node and finding stuff. Sometimes you can get some matches, for example, that has points that are not connected to any face, and that can cause some issues sometimes. So these can delete those isolated points that are not connected to any face. This can find them and you can do something else with the data, right? So it's actually pretty useful to have this. Then we have the typical delete strands, delete faces, delete points. The difference now is that we can keep those properties intact when they're coming out, right, from the input. Then we have this new guy, erase component properties, which basically deletes multiple properties at the same time, or all of them if you use asterisk, right? And it just doesn't work just on point component. It works also on face or vertex component. Delete mesh point basically is going to delete points on a mesh and that also is going to delete the fade that these points are connected. Again, the update point neighbors basically is actually pretty helpful. You can do a lot with this data. So basically it's just if you feed a point here, right, it can give you what are the neighbors or what are those points neighbors, and then you can do something with that data. For me this is more like here, but maybe some people are gonna think that's more low level, so that's why I put it in the middle. And this is really what I consider more low level, at least in my opinion, because these nodes you're gonna start finding them actually in these guys. So for example, the find mesh island, it's gonna do what it says. It's gonna find islands, faces, right, that disconnected. So for example, you're gonna find that node inside the separate mesh, which it makes total sense. Filter faces, you're gonna find it in here inside filter faces. Filter strands is gonna be inside the deleted strands. And for example, points to faces is going to be somewhere here too. And in order for this to work correctly, by the way, you need this update mesh agency, an agency, or whatever you pronounce this thing here. But this can give you some useful data, but again, for this to work correctly, you need this. This is not new to 2.6. Actually, it was before there. It was just hidden, and now it's been exposed to the graph. These guys, filter offset array, is going to be useful for strands, for example, or mesh faces when you need to filter that data, for example. And then these two guys here, more like low level as well, and they're building blocks to start building more high level tools, and they're multi-threaded. So useful nodes here. This is not new, but it's also been updated, by the way. So, and probably I'm missing more nodes here, but I just wanted to touch base very quickly on what is new on 2.6. Again, it's low to mid-level, great for TDs and advanced users. But if you're adventurous, I mean, go ahead and start playing. You're gonna learn a lot actually on how mesh data works and all that stuff. So these nodes are great. But for example, if you don't want to deal with that, you can start using this, I believe, right away, because this is going to be on the day-to-day tasks, are going to be very helpful. So this release, even though they are not like the exciting tools like polybevel, polyextrusion, remesh, or whatever, right, are useful. And so I got, in my opinion, we have a little bit of everything for everyone. I'm sure we're gonna start seeing very soon more high-level tools. So yeah. With that said, hopefully this was helpful, and until next one, cheers.